As soon as Yandi entered the stage with that unreadable expression on her face, the atmosphere changed. She had not slept, as seen by her tight smile, shaky breathing, and eyes. No one anticipated her to confirm the rumors that had been circulating backstage for weeks. That is, until she reportedly murmured, "I could be pregnant." Just loud enough for two cast members to hear while sitting down during a break and filming. The entire Love and Hip Hop Atlanta Season 13 production was rocked by those 4 words. The fallout and the ensuing stillness were deafening. According to instant sources, phones were grabbed right away. A producer almost dropped their headset as texts began to fly. Some believed it to be a diversion or a joke. According to others, her face conveyed that it wasn't done for attention. Seemed real, or at least it was. And the timing is really crazy. Tasha K's spying story has just been brought through Mendeecees. In addition to Erica Mena's personal emotional turmoil, Yandi may be bringing a child into the mix. Fans are in disbelief, perplexed and demanding clarification. Is this the start of a new chapter in Yandi's life, or is everything she believed to be stable coming apart? Because there will be serious repercussions if it is true. They will be seismic. The final scene they filmed left the room buzzing. Erica is pacing the corridor. Whispering in the corners is production. However, the moment that caused everyone to freeze was discarded by Yandi. She didn't intend to say it. When the cameras weren't even rolling, it just slipped past her lips and came out. To the actors, the first people to hear it were an assistant producer and a hairstylist. Before they saw her eyes, they assumed she was kidding. She didn't flinch. She didn't grin. A little softer this time. "I could be pregnant," she murmured, glancing down at her hands. Then the commotion began. The stylist mailed something to a makeup artist nearby, who whispered it to another crew member right away. Within 5 minutes, the entire set knew, and within 10 people were already picking sides. Some felt sympathy had been keeping everything together, while Mendeecees was drowning in scandal. While Erica's breakdowns became daily news, and while the producers continued pushing for messier, meaner content, others were skeptical. The problem was that Gandhi hadn't told Mendeecees yet, and according to a close source on set, she hadn't even confirmed it herself. There was no official test, no doctor's visits, just late periods, overwhelming fatigue, and a growing sense that her body was shifting in a way she couldn't ignore. However, saying it aloud made it real, and now it was too late to walk it back. They wondered aloud behind her back whether there was another perfectly timed narrative twist. Yandi wasn't sure, and she wasn't even sure if she believed it herself yet. But the show had to go on, and when Mendeecees arrived for filming the following day, no one informed him of what was happening. They huddled with the director and began whispering plans, wanting her to say it on camera to make it a part of the season arc to catch Mendeecees' raw reaction. He noticed right away that something was wrong. The energy in the room felt tight. When he asked where Yandi was, no one would give him a direct response, only evasive remarks like "she's getting ready" or "she's in glom." Heads up, the same overlit interview chair, the same fake plant in the corner, and the same line of questioning that always started innocently and ended in chaos. However, this time when they asked him about his relationship with Yandi, they weren't looking for romance. They were waiting for the bomb to drop. But an hour ago, glam was over, and she didn't approach him when she did show up. She stayed out of his line of sight by sitting on the other side of the couch. He realized then that something had changed. It began to roll. Innocent inquiries about how they were handling the tension on set kicked off the chat. The typical surface-level nonsense about whether or not they were communicating better this season. Then, unexpectedly, though, "Is there anything you want to tell him? Something personal?" The producer asked Yandi, leaning forward. Mendeecees gave her a perplexed look. Her face turned white. The cameras caught every tremor in her voice as she paused, gulped deeply, and repeated the words. "I might be expecting a Child, there was an agonizing quiet. Mendez blinked once and twice before laughing softly and startedly. The kind of laugh that wasn't not funny at all. He questioned, "Are you serious?" Yandi could hardly meet his eyes as she nodded slowly. Whispering, "I haven't confirmed it yet," she said. The cameras did not cut, but something feels different. None of the crew breathed. Mendeecees leaned back on the couch and let out a breath as if the wind had been knocked him unconscious. Not happy or furious, simply surprised and ... "This isn't the time for something like this," he whispered, almost too low to hear, and it was more powerful than anything else he could have spoken. Yandi winced. The room was already shattered when the producer attempted to interrupt with a follow-up. Without saying another word, Yandi got up and walked out, putting her hands down her trousers. The sound of her breath catching just before the door closed behind her was captured by her microphone, and the audio continued to roll. Catastrophe broke out backstage. Members of the crew muttered that the scene had gone wrong. Yandi wasn't considering the show, but the showrunner was heard saying, "We have to be careful with this." Another producer murmured, "If it is real, it changes everything." Her hand was pressed to her chest as she sat by herself in the corridor, attempting to regulate her heartbeat. She wasn't sure which stung more, his response, or the fact that she said it even though she knew it was coming. Mendez, meanwhile, spent minutes sitting in the interview chair. He was given water by someone, he left it alone, continued to look straight ahead as if he were witnessing the unfolding of his life in real time. He whispered to no one in particular, "We just got through the last mess. And now this." After a crew member unintentionally posted a grainy picture of Yandi leaving the stage with her hand on her stomach later that evening, viewers began to speculate. The caption was reposted to several fan pages before being swiftly removed. Comments went wild. She was accused by some of using her pregnancy to gain attention. She had every right to be overwhelmed, according to those who backed her. Mendez apparently didn't talk to Yandi for hours back home. One admirer said, "If it is real, then she's the only one trying to bring life into all this darkness." They stared at different corners of the living room while sitting quietly and hardly touching. Finally, she eased the tension. Softly, "I didn't say it to trap you," she informed him. Mendez didn't immediately look at her when he said, "I said it because I'm scared." He rubbed the back of his neck and simply nodded. "Instead of telling everyone, you ought to have told me first." Both because it was true and because she hadn't intended for it to spread this way. That line hurt more than she had anticipated. Nothing remained private in this society, but she had confided in someone outside of Kimura, hoping that perhaps it wouldn't be used against her for once. Nor emotions, nor anxieties. Not even a baby with a maybe. The blogosphere was overrun, with headlines the following morning. During the Lotto filming, Yandi makes a pregnancy hint. The third baby is on the way. On set, Mendez was taken by surprise. Nobody awaited verification. The decision had already been made by the internet, and they weren't as usual. There was vicious conjecture on every thread and comment section. She is attempting to save a failing marriage. She's telling lies. This pertains to a plot. Another baby arc. Another season arc, baby. Yandi, meanwhile, wasn't interested in publicity. Had to do with control, something she hadn't experienced in a while. She now had to choose between letting it shatter her or reclaiming her narrative. While standing in the midst of all this chaos, Yandawa had not taken a nap. The image of Mendeecees' face kept replaying in her mind, blank, dazed, and far away each time she closed her eyes. All night long, her phone buzzed. The screen brightening with messages from individuals she hadn't spoken to in months, fan replies and notifications. Everyone was curious as to whether it was true. "Baby, you know I love you, but please tell me this isn't just for ratings," Mother said in a voicemail left after 2 calls. Yandandi remained silent. She was unable to. Not quite yet. The following morning, she from the Mendeecees. He left the house before dawn, took a shower, got up early, and didn't disclose his destination. Yandi simply rubbed her temples while sitting on the side of the bed. She couldn't even tell if she was upset or sad, perhaps more, perhaps both. All she could do was remain silent, even if she wanted to scream. She felt as though she was the only one on hold and everything else was going slowly. Producers were already rushing around the set. Soon as they saw the explosion on the internet, they realized they had to mold it. The showrunner immediately responded when one of the section editors was heard to comment, "We've got gold, but it's risky gold." Another producer questioned, "What if she's not pregnant? Not important." We take the wave. Cast members were instructed to refrain from making public remarks and to limit their reactions to confessionals. However, not everybody paid attention. Erica tweeted a mysterious tweet, already feeling like fans went crazy. Some stood up for Erica, arguing that she had the right to express her truth. She was dragged by others for making fun of women who might be experiencing a real pregnancy crisis. Erica did not explain. A meme depicting a person drinking tea was recently retweeted by her. Mendeecees reappeared that same afternoon. He was obviously anxious and hardly spoke when he arrived at a private scene taping with Kirk and Scrappy. "Are you good?" Kirk asked him directly, and Mendeecees stopped for a long time before answering. Good is defined by Scrappy. It's trying to lighten the situation. Mendeecees joked, "Man, you might be a daddy again at that blessing." Mendeecees didn't laugh. Kirk later acknowledged his concern during the confessional, saying, "I just wanted a minute to breathe. Now I have to figure out how to be." He simply glanced down at his hands. Man, he appeared to be drowning. That look is not new to me. That man isn't sure if he should run or stay. Supporters commended Kirk for displaying maturity, but the actual discussion took place on the internet. Timelines were already being debated by bloggers. To find out if Yandi had been concealing a bump, they were attempting to follow her posts, movements, and clothes throughout the previous month. Some claimed it was a stretch, while others agreed. The important thing was that they were conversing. Do it all the time at home. At last, Yandi gave her doctor a call. She was much more nervous because she had to wait for days for the appointment. She cuddled up on the couch for the majority of the day, partially watching previous episodes of the show while her thoughts wandered. Yandi was unsure of how to respond when her daughter entered the room, crawled up next to her and said, "Mommy, why do people keep saying baby on the phone?" Before the surprise blow hit, she simply kissed her forehead and muttered, "Some people don't know when to mind their business." A raw video of Yandi telling Mendeecees was released by a production worker. A brief clip ended up on a gossip page, even though it wasn't yet scheduled for release. The emotion was evident, despite the poor lighting and unpolished audio. Fans were able to view the precise second shutdown of Mendeecees. They noticed Yandi's lip quiver. They are like knives. The video went viral right away, and people had a lot to say. He appeared to have seen a ghost. She appeared to already be aware that he wouldn't be pleased. This is depressing, not amusing. Some cast members even responded in private, posting the video along with comments like, "This ain't right," and "Pray." For her, according to one insider, Mimi Faust sent Yandi a direct message with a warning and encouragement. Do not allow them to utilize your trauma as a plot point. Yandi read it 3 times and said, "Own it," before they spin it. For the first time, she truly felt seen in the message. Mendeecees finally returned home that evening. He entered the kitchen, left his keys on the counter, and remained there for a bit without saying anything. Yandi stood in the corridor and observed. "Him, are you mad at me?" she finally said, and he shook his head. She nodded. "I'm not angry, Mobile. I do too." He turned to her at that moment, the strain in his face somewhat easing, and she said, "I didn't plan it this way. Didn't even plan to say it." They both understood what he meant when he said, "I just don't want us to go through this in public." Again, not like last time. The bloggers, the cameras, the eyes that never stop watching them fail. They had already made it through so much. Rumors, public splits, custody disputes, infidelity, and now the prospect of another kid in the midst of a storm. Neither had been ready for Dot. Yandi declined to film that weekend. Despite strong pressure from producers, she refused to back down. Rather, she recorded a voice message and forwarded it straight to the executive producer. She stated in it, "I'm not doing this like it's a plot twist. This is my life, and until I know what's happening with my body, I'm not answering any more questions." In the meantime, fans remained glued to their screens. And a well-known blogger hosted a live reaction stream in which she played back the leaked footage and asked viewers to comment on whether Yandi was being sincere, whether Mendeecees was mistaken to react that way, or whether they were both simply exhausted. Chat was overflowing with comments like, "She deserves better. He's emotionally unavailable. And they should leave the show." However, Yandi had one more thing to do before leaving. So she reserved a private hotel suite and called her closest friends, Rashida, Mimi, and Carly, over. Just a few wine glasses, takeout containers, and honest honesty, no cameras, no crew. After they were all seated, Yandi paused and remarked, "I haven't taken the test yet. Too much fear has gripped me. I must know." "Whatever happens," Mimi remarked, with a gentle grin as the room fell silent and Carly took her hand. Rashida nodded. "You have us." Yandi had never felt more vulnerable as they sat together, held space, and waited for the moment of truth to arrive. The only sounds in the hallway outside the hotel suite were the faint hum of the vending machine and the occasional footfall of staff members. Inside the room, Rashida waited just outside the door, pacing, peering at her watch, and then turning back to the bathroom as if she could time to move more quickly. They didn't need to talk. The weight of the moment spoke for itself. A few minutes later, the bathroom door creaked open. And Yandi didn't say anything at first, just held up the test, her face unreadable, and for a moment, no one breathed. Carly sat on the edge of the bed, nervously picking at the hem of her dress while Mimi sipped wine slowly, trying to keep her energy grounded. Mimi got up slowly. The room was quiet, but the silence felt different now. Not tense, just heavy. Yandi sat down on the bed, put the test on the nightstand, and buried her face in her hands. Finally, she whispered in a soft, trembling voice, "It's negative." Rashida breathed forcefully, and Carly blinked, mumbling, "I don't know what I'm feeling." She feeling let down? "Really, I have no idea." "It's okay not to know," Mimi said, sitting next to her and giving her a gentle back rub. "What matters is that you listened to your body, you paid attention, and now you can breathe." Carly added, "And when you're ready to talk about it on camera, do it your way, not theirs." Yandi nodded, wiping at her eyes. "I guess I just needed something to make sense." Rashida sat down opposite her. "Girl, nothing about this show or this world ever makes sense, but you're here. You're strong, okay? And you're not alone." But the machine didn't wait, and by morning, word had already spread that Yandi wasn't pregnant. Fans flooded the comments, sections of every blog that had speculated otherwise, some offering solutions. She didn't like the false alarm, the spiral it caused, or the way Mendeecees looked at her like she'd thrown a grenade into their already fragile peace. One well-liked remark said, "See, told y'all it was just for ratings," while others made fun. "Of her, it's just 2 letters. All right, no. How are you feeling?" Another added, "She played with people's emotions again. Same old Yandandi, all I hated was loud, the empathy." She stared at the screen waiting, but that was it. The producers were already reworking the plot and wanted Yandi to do a solo confessional. Something emotional, something raw. But she refused, saying, "I already gave you my raw." It felt like someone had taken a pin to a balloon she had been carrying around. And all that air, all that tension, just leaked out and left her hollow dot on set. "No, we'll get through this." They tried to get Mendeecees to open up and think back on the experience, but he shut them down too. It's nothing to think about. He said it was a false alarm. The producer tried again, but it brought up a lot of emotion. Said, I'm not performing it again for a close-up. They weren't happy about it, but they knew better than to push her in that moment. Fans aren't the ones raising my kids, Mendeecees said, giving him a direct look. At the moment, I owe them nothing. The wall suddenly appeared between them and the plot that they believed would win the season, but Yandi and Mena cooperating because they were sick and tired of being used as pawns, being analyzed and being labeled dramatic when they were simply trying to breathe. It took them a few days to speak to each other again. They happened to be in the same studio for a wardrobe fitting, so it wasn't planned. The atmosphere was intense, and when Yandi entered, Mendeecees was already scrolling through his phone. She sat down a few feet away, and neither of them said anything until she finally said, "So this is where we are." He raised his head. "What do you suppose our location is?" "Strangers with a common past," she shrugged. "You've dropped something big in front of the entire world," he groaned. I wasn't prepared either. "I know, and I didn't mean for it to go that way," she said, nodding, simply went into a panic. After a little silence, he continued, "I wasn't afraid of the infant. Perhaps that was the wake-up call we needed." He nodded. Perhaps they didn't cry or embrace, but instead sat there beside people with too much history and not enough clarity. Awaz was afraid of what it would mean for us because of all we haven't addressed. She gazed at him with gentle eyes. Yandi agreed to film a reflective scene, but only on her terms. She sat in a dimly lit room with no cutaways or producers asking questions, just her and the camera. "I thought I might be pregnant," she said, but it was something left to unravel. Dot Production finally got what they wanted, sort of. Clip, which aired weeks later, caught the internet off guard. It wasn't dramatic or flashy, but it was real. And in a season full of confrontation and chaos, that quiet moment stood out. It made me realize how much fear I still carry. Not about motherhood, but about life. Being seen and losing myself. In this story, people think they know. "Congratulations to Yandi for being honest," Erica wrote in a tale she uploaded. With the message, "Healing is messy but necessary," Russia Dita reposted. The world moved on, but Yandi remembered what those days had felt like, the weight. The worry, the wave of judgment, and most importantly, the strange comfort in knowing that Mindy remained silent in public, but that he watched it multiple times. According to sources, by the end of the week, there was another scandal. While the storm surrounding Yandi's pregnancy scare had subsided on the surface, its emotional aftershock continued to reverberate beneath everything. The cameras continued to roll, the cast continued to perform, and the producers refocused their attention on new drama. But Yandi moved differently now. She walked through the next filming block with her head high. Not because everything was okay, but because she'd survived it. And in this world, that was enough. People noticed, but they weren't sure what to make of it. Behind the scenes, Mendeecees was also keeping a low profile, declining 3 requests for interviews and ceasing to reply to messages from the post-production team. She wasn't hurrying to every scene, she wasn't getting involved in petty arguments, and she most definitely wasn't trying to make headlines. Instead, she became quieter and more deliberate. The couple wasn't broken, but they weren't exactly okay either. And their communication had changed until it wasn't cold, but it wasn't warm either. Mendeecees had returned to sleeping. They wanted a follow-up sit-down with him and Yandi together, presenting it as a healing moment for the viewers. But he declined, saying he wasn't interested in reliving something he was still processing in real life, and honestly, he didn't trust the editors to treat it with the care it deserved. Rosa was one of the few people who saw what was truly happening. She visited Yandi one afternoon under the guise of a brief promo meeting, but she stayed long. After the cameras left and they sat in the kitchen sipping tea, the sunlight filtering through the window as Yandi finally opened up. Feel free to like the video. Be sure to subscribe. Avoid the story of love and hip-hop never ends, so don't miss our next in-depth discussion, and hit the bell icon. Simply continues getting deeper.